Okay, good morning students. So here we start with our week 10 lecture. Now in this week we are going to start with the new chapter, which is chapter 6, and since this is a top-down approach of the TCP/IP model, so we are done with the network layer in the last class. Now it's time to move down the layer below the network layer, which is the data link layer. So chapter 6 is in details about the data link layer and the LAN. Data link layer is also called as the link layer sometimes. So let's start with it. All right. Okay, moving next. So what are we going to do in this chapter? So we will understand what are the principles behind the link layer. The basic tasks of a data link layer is framing, error correction, and error detection. So we will talk about error detection, error correction, sharing a broadcast channel, link layer addressing, local area networks, and implementation of the various link layer technologies. So the topics that are covered in this chapter are 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 5.4 and 5.5. I plan to cover in this lecture 5.1, 5.2 and a part of 5.3. So let's start with the terminology of the link layer. So link layer protocol is used to move the datagram over the transmission medium. So the link layer protocol defines the format of the packets. Now here the host and the routers, they are called as nodes, and the communication channel that connect the nodes, they are called as the link, or sometimes we call it as the transmission medium. Link is nothing but the transmission medium. So the type of link can be either the wired links, it can be wireless links, or it can be local area networks. The position of data link layer is second from bottom. So it's a layer 2, and the form of and the data at this layer is called as frame. The basic job of layer 2 is at the sender side. It encapsulates the datagram received from the network layer into the frame. So data link layer has the responsibility of transferring the datagram from one node to the physically adjacent node over the link. Now, a link layer protocol is used to move datagram from individual link, and the link layer protocol, it defines what is the format of the packets that are exchanged between the nodes at the ends of the link. So the data exchanged by the data link layer is called as the frames, and the frame encapsulates the datagram. Now the network layer, if we recall the network layer has end-to-end jobs. That means it moves the transport layer segments from source host to the destination host. Now, whereas the data link layer has a little bit simpler job, it moves the datagram from node to node over a single path. So important characteristic of the link layer is that datagram may be carried by different data link layer protocols on the same path, on different links on the same path. So datagram may be transferred by different data link protocols. For example, on the first link, Ethernet protocol may be used. On the second link, when it is transferred from node to node, frame relay can be used, and on the third link, last link, 802.11 protocol can be used. Each link protocol provides different services. Maybe some of the links may provide RDT. RDT is reliable data transfer. Some protocols may provide reliable data transfer over the link, and some protocols may not be able to provide the reliable data delivery or data transfer over the link. So network layer must be able to accomplish its end-to-end job in the presence of the different set of the individual link layer services. Next is now we will talk about the different link layer services. So the first is framing and link access. What is framing? Framing is to encapsulate a datagram which is received from the network layer. So as we know that data link layer receives a datagram from the network layer and encapsulates the datagram into the frame at the sender side. When it adds into the frame, it adds certain headers and trailers. So almost all link protocols, they encapsulate network layer datagram within the link layer frame. Now, what does a frame consist of? Frame consists of data field in which a datagram is inserted, and there are number of other header fields also. For example, MAC addresses are used in the frame to identify the source and the destination. It is different. MAC address is different from the IP address. Also, regarding the link access, MAC protocol specifies the rules in which a frame is transmitted onto the link. For example, point-to-point links have a single sender and a single receiver, and there are other protocols also. Next important link layer, data link layer service is the reliable data delivery between the adjacent nodes. When a link layer protocol it provides actually reliable delivery service. It guarantees to move each datagram across the link without any error. So you can recall, if we can recall, we learned in the transport layer chapter also the protocol of the transport layer, like TCP, it provides a reliable delivery service. Similarly to the transport layer delivery service, link layer also provides a reliable data delivery service, and it is achieved by the acknowledgement and the retransmission, just like we learned in the TCP protocol. Link layers reliable delivery service is often used for links that are prone to the higher error rate, such as in the wireless links, where we know that the error transmission rate in the data will be quite higher, and the aim of the data link layer in such links is to correct the errors locally and to find out where the error occurs. So wireless links, they have the error rates. So we need that's why we need a link level and the end-to-end reliability. Next is flow control. As we know that the nodes on each side, they have a limited amount of the buffer space. So this is a concern for the receiver, because receiving node may receive frames at a rate faster than it can process them, and in doing so, some of the frames may get lost, or some of the frames it has to discard away. Without flow control, the receiver's buffer can overflow and then the frames can get lost. So the flow control, it has to do the pacing between the adjacent sending and the receiving nodes. Next is error detection. As we know, when the data travels from source to the destination, errors may be induced in the data because of many factors, such as there can be because of the movement of the electrons, because of the crosstalks, because of the induction in the wires, some bits may get changed. So because of signal attenuation, because of noise, certain bits may get changed. So receiver has to detect the presence of the errors, and a single sender it sends a signals to the sender for retransmission, or it may drop a frame. Now it depends upon the policy. Next is error correction. So error correction, first is error detection, means detecting an error, and error correction means first of all the error is detected and then error is corrected. So error correction is similar to error detection, except that receiver not only detects the errors, but it also corrects. Now for correcting, it must know where exactly the error has occurred. Some protocols provide link layer error correction for the entire packet also. Half duplex and full duplex. Now for the half duplex, what full duplex means, the nodes at both the link may transmit packets at the same time. That means sender and receiver can send the packets or data to each other at the same time. Whereas half duplex means only one of the node, either sender or receiver, can transmit the data at a particular time. So in half duplex, if sender is sending the data, receiver cannot send it. If receiver is sending the data to the sender, sender cannot send it. But in full duplex, both of them, they can use the transmission link at the same time. Now, where the data link layer is implemented. Data link layer is present in each and every host, Link layer is implemented in the adapter, or sometimes we call it as the network interface card or on a chip. So Ethernet card, normally our systems they have the Ethernet card or 802.11 card, which is the wireless card or the Ethernet chipset. It implements the link and the physical layer. So what it does, if you see over here, this diagram, this figure. So this is an example of the NIC card. There is a slot on the motherboard for the NIC card. This is an example of the 80.11, which is the wireless card. Now this figure shows where exactly is the position, typical host architecture. So it is implemented in the network adapter. We call it as the network interface card. Now what does network interface card has? The most important part of the network interface card is the controller. We call it as the link layer controller. Usually what is a link layer controller? Link layer controller is a single special purpose chip that implements many of the link layer services such as framing, flow controller, error detection, error correction, and many others. So much of the link layer controller's functionality is implemented in the hardware. That's why network layer, data link layer, and physical layer, they are hardware. Network layer lies between hardware and software because it uses hardware and software capabilities also. Whereas data link layer, it's a pure hardware layer with very few software capabilities. So what happens? On the sending side, controller takes a datagram. This is how the controller initiates the task. So how it actually transmits? On the sending side, the controller takes of the NIC card, network interface card, takes the datagram that has been created and stored in the memory of the host, by the higher layers of the protocol stack. So it encapsulates the datagram in the frame. It adds some header. The header contains some error checking bits, reliable data transfer, flow control, etc. Now on the receiving side, it looks for errors. First of all, it finds out whether there are errors in the data or not, and it checks for reliable data transfer also, flow control. Then it extracts the datagram from the frame and passes to the upper layer at the receiving side. Now if the link layer performs error detection, then it is sending controller that sets the error detection bits in the frame header, and it is receiving from the controller that it performs the error detection. If the link layer is flow control, then the sending and the receiving controllers, they exchange the flow control information so that sender sends the frame at the rate and receiver is able to handle. So all this information is embedded in the header of the frame. Alright, moving on further. Okay, so that was about topic 5.1. Now we move on to the error detection and error correction. So this is an important task of the data link layer. Detecting and correcting the corrupted bits of the link layer frames. So bits can be corrupted when they are transmitted from sender to the receiver because of many external factors. Now EDC stands for error detection and correction bits. Now how does error correction is achieved? Error detection and correction is achieved by increasing the length of the data. That means adding certain extra bits to data what has been sent. Suppose we are sending a message to someone, or we are sending a message from one system to another, and for example, let's assume that our message is 4 bits long. Then what error detection or correction technique will do? It will increase the length of its data by adding certain extra bits to it. This is called as redundancy. So redundancy is achieved by adding some extra bits. So here some extra bits may be added. It may be 1, it may be 2, it may be 3, because there are many error detection and correction techniques. So depending upon which error detection or correction technique is used, the number of bits will be added. One error detection technique we will discuss now. Now, EDC stands for error detection and correction bits, which is achieved by redundancy. That means adding some extra duplicate bits to the data. D stands for data, which is protected by error checking. It may include the header fields. Now, note that error detection is not 100% reliable. There is actually nothing like 100% reliability. Even that is something in ideal situation, so which is not possible to achieve. Protocol may miss some errors, but it happens rarely, and larger EDC fields yield better detection and correction. So if we have a large field or large code to embedded with the data, it yields a better detection and correction. And so here is the diagram that shows us how it happens. Now, when at the center side, now you have a data. Now data consists of d bits, just like I assumed over here. Let me assume that I have some data to send. Let me assume that it is 4 bits. I have assumed over here, like here. Now on the sender side, some algorithm or some error detection and correction technique will be applied to this data, which will increase the overall length of the data by adding certain bits to the data. So now data plus certain bits which are added by applying some technique or some algorithm will be sent on the transmission medium to the receiver. So data D is to be protected against is added with the error detection and correction bit. We call it as EDC. So data to be protected includes not only datagram, but also it includes the code also. So both data and EDC, that means data and the extra bits or we call it as error detection code that we have added, they are sent to the receiving node in the frame. Now at the receiving side, a sequence of bits D complement and EDC complement are received. It's not D and EDC. So D complement and EDC complement. So it is reverse of this, they are received. Now whatever is received on the receiver side, the same technique or the same algorithm will be applied to this whatever data is received. Now when this technique is when the technique is applied on the sequence of D complement or EDC complement, the challenge is to determine whether or not D complement is same as original D. So when that technique is applied or when that principle is applied to this, it will give us the data bits. It will give us the same data bits which the user has sent. So the technique is applied to check whether all the data bits in this D complement are okay or not. If they are not okay, the frame can be rejected, or a receiver can request the sender to transmit the bits again or to transmit the frame again. But if all the data bits are okay, then datagram is extracted and it is and then it is passed to the network layer. Error detection and correction technique allow the receiver sometimes, but not always, to detect the bit errors that have occurred. Even with the use of error detection, there still may be undetected errors. This is what I said in the previous slide, that there is nothing there is nothing 100% reliability. So a receiver may be unaware. There may be chances that receiver is unaware that received information contains some bit errors. So as a consequence, receiver might deliver sometimes corrupted datagram to the network layer, or it may be unaware that the contents of the field in the header fields of the frame, they are corrupted. So parity check, this is an example, this is one of the example, or this is one of the technique for error detection and correction. We can have a single bit parity or two-dimensional bit parity. Now first of all, what is a parity check? It is the simplest of all the error detection, a single parity bit. Now what is a single parity bit? Suppose we have data or information to send to the user. Let me just assume that I have this data 0 1 1. I have this data to be sent to the user. So it contains of d bits, that means 4 bits. Now the parity I may have as a concept called even parity, or I may have a concept called odd parity. Now in case of even parity, the purpose here is to use the EDC in such a way that the number of ones in the data are always even. So what will happen to this data? Suppose this is data. Now in case of even parity, what has to be done? The number of ones should be even. So data plus EDC, how this information will be sent? 0 1 1 1. Single parity means we have to add only one bit, and that too at the end of the data. So even parity means number of ones have to be made as even. So if we are making it as even parity, so the extra bit or the parity bit, we call it as a parity bit, the parity bit will be added as 1. Now suppose if I want to make it as a odd parity, the same data, if the technique used is single parity, but we have to make it as the odd parity, the system has to make it as the odd parity. So the parity bit that will be added to this data is 0. So now how this data will be sent to the receiver? This data will be sent to the receiver as 0, 3 times 1 and 0. So this is data 4 bits. This is one extra bit, which is the redundancy. We call it as the redundant bit. We call it as the parity bit. This is added as a error detection and correction bit. So in case of in even parity, sender includes one additional bit, choose its value such that total number of ones is even, and for odd parity value is chosen such that number of ones is odd. Now at the receiver side, what happens at the receiver side? Receiver side is also simple with this simple parity bit. The receiver need only to count the number of ones. So if now what receiver will do, suppose this has been sent to the receiver. Now if we are using the odd parity, now receiver will check the number of ones in this received data. If the number of ones are odd, it will accept it. If the number of ones are even, it will reject it, thinking that the data has been corrupted. In case of even parity, it will make sure that number of ones are even. Now if the number of ones received are even, it will accept the data. If the number of ones in the received data are odd, it will reject it, thinking that there has been a error in the bit. Now single parity bit, the basic main disadvantage of the single parity bit, that it can only detect a single bit error. But what happens if the error is induced on two places? So for example over here, if I in the even bit parity, if I make it something like this, the error is on the error is on the two places. Suppose error is on the two places. It may go undetected. Suppose it is maybe 1 0 1 1. Alright, so here the error is at these two places. These two bits have changed, but the parity bit is the same. So thinking that number of ones are even, it will accept the data. But although the data is 0 1 1, but it has received like 1 0 1 1, which is wrong data received. But in case of single parity, the receiver will accept it since the number of ones are even. So this is the drawback of the single bit parity. If there is an error in more than one bit, that error will go on that error will go on undetected. So if even number of bit error occurs or more than one bit error occurs, that will go on undetected. Now for to overcome this disadvantage, we have a two-dimensional bit parity. It will detect and correct the single bit errors. So it is a generalization of a single bit parity. Here the bits, the data that we have to send, they are divided into rows and columns, or we say that in a matrix format. In the matrix format, a parity value is computed for each row and each column. Thereby the resulting I plus j plus 1 parity bits will comprise of the linked layer frames. Now see here, for example, we want to send the data. Now here the data has been divided into, if you see, 1 2 3 4 5 columns and 3 rows. Now parity will be computed for each row and for each column. This will actually help us to find out the exact position or the exact place of the error induced. So suppose for this row, since there are 3 ones, if it is an even parity, we have to make the even number of ones. There are 3 ones, so the parity bit added will be 1. There are already 4 ones in the single row, the parity bit added is 0. There are 3 ones in the last row, so the parity bit added is 1. Now we will calculate the parity column wise. Since there are even number of ones, the parity added is 0. Even ones, parity is 0. Odd ones, parity is 1. Even ones, parity is 0 here. Odd ones, parity is 1 over here. And in the last column, if there are even number of ones, parity added is 0. So this is a example where there is no error. Now let's assume that this bit changes over here. Now this, when we are transmitting at the receiver side, an error is induced over here at this place. Now how the receiver will find out? It has to find out the exact place, because since this has changed to zeros, right? Number of ones are here odd. So why there is a 0? That means here should be 1. That means this parity computed is wrong. Now again, if we go over here in this column, in the second column, number of ones will become odd, but the parity bit put over here is 0. So in this way, the receiver system will find out the exact position of the error, and it will detect the error, and it will be able to correct the error at that particular position. So this two-dimensional bit parity can be used for detecting and correcting the single bit parity. So in this case, receiver will not only detect the single bit error, but it will also use the column and the row indexes with the parity to identify which bit has been corrupted, and it will be able to correct that error. Next we move forward. Another important, this is also quite important method, cyclic redundancy check, which is used in the internet and the wide area networks, sometimes in the LANs also. Very important technique for detecting and correcting. So it can detect errors and it can correct errors. Cyclic redundancy code. It is actually widely used today in the computer networks. CRC codes, they are known as the polynomial codes. We are not going to discuss this technique in detail, just quickly. So it's a more powerful error detection codes, and CRC codes are also called as polynomials. They are called as polynomials because it is possible to view the data to be sent as a polynomial whose coefficients are 0 and 1 value in the bit string, and the operations can be interpreted as the polynomial operations. So we view data bits D as a binary number, and we choose some bit pattern, R plus 1 bit pattern, which is called as the generator. And here the goal is to choose CRC bits such that they are exactly divisible. Whatever our data is, it should be exactly divisible by the generator function. So some generator function is computed and chosen. Same generator function will be used by the sender and the receiver. So receiver knows G divides D, and R is the redundant or the extra bits added to the data. So generator function will divide data plus the redundant bits, and the receiver knows the same generator function it will use to get the data. Now the generator function will divide data plus the redundant bits. If remainder, when it divides, if the remainder obtained at the end is 0, that means data received is correct. But if some non-zero remainder is obtained, that means their error is detected. So it can detect all burst errors less than r plus 1 bits. Whatever generator is chosen, less than the size of that generator, it can detect all burst errors. Now what is a burst error? Now there are two types of errors. One is single bit error, another one is the burst error. Single bit error means when there is an error in 1 bit position, just like in the example that we discussed in the last slides. Burst error means when there are errors on more than one position. For example, I have this data to be sent 1110. Now if this data is received as 111110, so that means it's a single bit error induced over here at this position. But if this data is received as 01101, now 011 okay, 0. So there is an error at this position, there is an error at this place, this is okay, there is an error at, so there are 3 errors. When the errors induced are more than 1, they are called as the burst errors. So cyclic redundancy check is a technique which can detect burst error also. It is widely used in practice. It is used in LANs. It is used in wireless LANs also. It is used in Wi-Fi. It is used in the ATM networks also. So what is the format? Format is data bits plus some redundant bits, which we call it as the CRC bits. They are added to the data. Next is, we will talk about now multiple access protocols. What are multiple access protocols? Now in the beginning we discussed that there are two types of links in a network. One is point to point and another one is the broadcast. Point to point links, they consist of a single sender at one end of the link and a single receiver. That means there is one sender and one receiver. Many link layer protocols, we have many link layer protocols which are designed for the point to point links, such as point to point protocol for the dial-up access, and then we have the HDLC protocol, which is high level data link control, a high level data link control. So point to point link exists between the Ethernet switch and the host. So if we are using a switch and host, that time we are using the point to point protocol. The another type of link is the broadcast link. Broadcast link can have multiple senders and receivers all connected on the same single shared broadcast channel. So the broadcast means when one node transmits a frame, the channel broadcasts to frame, and all the other nodes that are attached on that network, they will receive a copy of that frame. It's used in the old-fashioned Ethernet and Ethernet and wireless LANs. They are example of the broadcast layer, link layer technologies. 802.11, which is the wireless LAN, it is also an example of the broadcast. It is also an example of the broadcast medium. Now, what is actually broadcasting? Broadcasting, you are all familiar with, like a television, whatever is broadcasting means conveying the information to everyone. Just like let's take an example of the teacher taking a class. So whatever the teacher is speaking, it is all the student, it is broadcasted to all the students in that class. So a broadcast channel is something like where many people gather in a large room to talk and listen. But the central problem here is who gets to talk and when. Now in case of computer networks, if we are using a broadcast channel, that means there are many senders, many receivers. So the main problem is who can use the channel to send the data, and when it can send the data. With the humans, when we take our daily life examples, there is no problem, but when it comes to the technology, there is a problem that who can send the data, and at what time he can send the data. So going to the next slide, computer networks, they have the protocols, we call it as the multiple access protocols, by which the nodes, which are the host or the sender and the receiver, they regulate their transmission into a shared broadcast channel. Because if you see over here, if I go back, this is a shared wire, a single shared medium exists between the various hosts or various nodes. So single shared medium exists. Now who can use that shared medium? So computer networks, they have the protocols, which we call it as the multiple access protocols, by which they regulate their transmission into the shared broadcast channel. So multiple access protocols, they are needed in wide variety of networks, like wired networks, wireless networks, satellite and the satellite networks. So all these type of networks they need. When two or more nodes, they are transmitting at the same time, simultaneous transmission by the node, it may lead to the interference and the collision. Okay, let me just give you an example. If in a class I am taking a lecture and you want to ask a question from me, if two or three students try to speak at the same time, what happens is your information collide with each other, there is an interference, and I will not get what are you trying to speak. I will not get what student one's question is, what is the second student's question, and what is the third student's question. So same thing happens in the computer networks also. So if more than one station tries to send the data of the various senders, it interferes with each other, which leads to the collision. Collision is if a node receives two or more signals at the same time. Just like with the human being, if two students try to ask the question at the same time, it will lead to a collision, and the teacher will not get what the students are trying to question is. Because all nodes are capable of transmitting the frames, more than two nodes can transmit the frames at the same time. So when this happens, all the nodes receive multiple frames, and the transmitted frames collide at all the receivers, and the collision occurs. So no receiving node can make sense of the frames that were transmitted. So that means that signals of the colliding frames becomes tangled with each other. So all the frames involved in collision are lost, and the broadcast channel is wasted during the collision. So if many nodes transmit the frames, many transmissions will result in collisions, and in that case bandwidth of the link will be wasted. As we know that bandwidth is the precious resource of a link, so it need not to be wasted. So in order to make sure that broadcast channel performs useful work when multiple channels are active, it is necessary to coordinate the transmission of the active nodes. And over the years, many such protocols have been implemented in the variety of link layer technology. So the multiple access protocol, it's a distributed algorithm that determines how the nodes will share the channel, who will transmit, and what time. So it determines when a node can transmit. The communication about the channel sharing must use the channel itself. So what is the idea? There are many protocols. And the protocols belong to one of the three categories: channel partitioning protocols, random access protocols, and taking turn protocols. We will discuss these protocols, but what is the bottom idea of the multiple access protocols? So what we have a channel, we have a transmission link, and the rate of transmission for that link is, let's assume that it's r bits per second, because the transmission link, the capacity or the transmission rate is measured in bps. So we have a transmission link and the transmission rate of that channel is rbps. What do we want actually? We want, when one node wants to transmit, it can send at the rate of the channel. What is r? R is the transmission rate of the channel. So let's assume this is a channel, so let's assume that 10 bps, 10 bits per second, this channel is able of transmitting 10 bits per second. So what we want, when one node wants to transmit, it will use the it can send at the rate of the channel. But if there are n nodes, that means if there are 5 nodes which wants to transmit, so each can send at an average rate of r by m. So for example, if I have 5 nodes to transmit and the transmission rate of this broadcast channel is 10 bps, so what is the rate of average rate of transmission? 10 by 5, r by m. R is transmission rate, m is number of nodes, which will be 2 bits per second. So you can see from here, if a single system is using the channel, it can send at a rate of 10 bps very fast. But if many number of nodes are using this channel, that is shared among the various senders. Next is, it should be fully decentralized, that is there is no master node that represents a single point of failure for the network. And the last thing is, protocol is simple so that it is not very expensive to implement. And so there are 3 broad classes of the MAC protocols: channel partitioning, random access, and taking turn. Channel partitioning means dividing a channel into the smaller pieces and allocate a piece of the channel to a node for exclusively used by a node. Random access means channel is not divided. It can allow the collisions and it can recover from the collisions also. Taking turns means node take turns one after the another, but nodes with more data to send can take longer turns. So this is the classification. We will discuss these classifications in the next slides. But before we go, so first of all we will discuss the channel partitioning protocols. Before we go further to the channel partitioning protocols, we have 2 important concepts to discuss: TDMA technique and FDMA technique. FDM. TDM is time division multiplexing and FDM is the frequency division multiplexing. These are the 2 techniques that are used to partition a broadcast channel, which are used to partition the bandwidth of the channel among all the nodes that are sharing the channel. These 2 techniques we have already done in the I think in chapter 1. So TDMA means access to a channel is given in rounds to all the stations. Each station gets a fixed length slot in each round. So what is time division multiplexing? Suppose we have a channel that can support n nodes, right? N can be any number. It can be 1, 2, 3, 4, any number. And that the transmission rate of the channel is r. So TDM divides the channel into the time frames and further divides the time frame into n time slots. So what happens is, each channel is given a time frame and it will use the whole bandwidth of the channel for transmitting the frame. TDM time frame it should not be confused with the link layer. Each slot time is assigned to one of the node. Now when a node has packet to send, what it will do, it will transmit the bits during its assigned time. So suppose we have 6 nodes which want to send the data. So first of all, first node will send the data, then second node, then third node, then fourth node, then fifth node, and then sixth node. Now suppose first node has again sent to data, then it will be the time of the first node, second node, third node, fourth node, and so on. Now for example, let's assume that in this example they have shown that there are 6 nodes or the 6 systems that want to send the data. Now if a certain system does not have any data to send, so what should happen? Should a time slot be reserved for that system, or it should be allocated to the other system who is trying to send the data. Now in this case we have synchronous and asynchronous TDMA, but in this example what we are discussing over here is that if a certain node has no data to send, its slot will be kept idle. Suppose for example over here node number 1, 3 and 4, they have the data to send, so they are sending it. Node number 2, 5 and 6, they do not have the data to send, so at this time the channel will be idle because node number 2 does not have any data to send. What I mean over here is I have stations 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So first of all, first sender will send in its time frame, time will be given to it. Next is second station, but this second station does not have any data to send. So that does not mean that the turn will be given to 3. No, that time will be allocated to this station number 2. Now after the time for station number 2 is over, now that it's time for its chance for station number 3. It has data to send, so it will send the data in its own time slot. Next is the chance for 4. It also has some data to send, so it will use its time slot. Next is 5 and 6. They do not have the data to send, so their slot will go on wasted. This is called as the TDMA. TDMA slot sizes are chosen so that a single packet can be transmitted during a slot time. TDMA is appealing because it eliminates collision and is perfectly fair. Each node gets a dedicated transmission rate, but it has a major drawback. The major drawback is that a node must always wait for its turn in the transmission sequence again, even when it is the only node within the time frame to send. So now the biggest drawback is, for example, there are 6 stations over here. Let's assume that only station number 1 wants to send the data. So the biggest drawback is station number 1 has sent the data now, 2 does not have any data, 3 does not have any data, 4 does not have, 5 does not have, 6 does not have. After the chance for 6 is over, then station number 1 can send the data. So during all this time, when the time slot is allocated to the other stations, station 1, node 1 is waiting, although the other stations do not have the data to send. So this is one of the biggest drawback of the TDM. Next is the frequency division multiplexing. Frequency division multiplexing, it divides the channel, FDM divides RBPS channel into the different frequencies. Now TDM divides the channel, allocates the channel on time frames or divides the channel on time frames, whereas frequency division multiplexing divides the channel transmission rate into different frequencies, each with a different bandwidth, and assigns each frequency to each of the node. So FDM creates n smaller channels. So what does this mean? Suppose I have this channel, there is some frequency of this channel. Now FDM will create small channels of different frequencies. Now all these channels of the smaller frequencies can be given to the n nodes. So FDM creates n smaller channels of R by n BPS, larger bits per second. So FDM has both advantages and drawbacks of TDM. It avoids the collision, and now bandwidth is fairly divided among number of nodes. FDM has disadvantage that a node is limited to its bandwidth. So suppose for example I have a channel which is 100 mbp, 100 bits per second. The transmission rate is 100 bits per second. So it will divide this channel into number of smaller channels. For example, the first channel has a transmission rate of 10 bps, second has a transmission rate of 50 bps, last one has again 40 bps. So it will allocate different frequencies to the different nodes. So the biggest disadvantage is if a node is allocated to send its data in the 10 bps channel, it will always use this channel only. So the disadvantage is if the node has higher data to send, it cannot use the faster channel, it will always use the smaller channel. So the channel spectrum is divided into frequency band. Each station is assigned fixed frequency band, and unused transmission time in frequency bands go idle. So for example, here same thing, 1, 3 and 4, they have the packet, and the frequency bands 2, 5 and 6 are idle because they are not used by 1, 3, 4. They have the different frequency ranges. So I will stop over here. In the next class, I will start discussing the random access protocols. So thank you so much.